Hey folks, this is Rhykker with a Diablo 4 Season 2 class tier list. The purpose of this video is to help you decide what class to play in Season 2 using the best info we currently have available to us. So much is changing in Season 2 and patch 1.2. We've gone over those changes in previous videos. There's the seasonal vampiric powers that are going to be game changers by themselves, and a lot of them are class, well, all of them actually are class agnostic, so they have the ability to potentially affect multiple classes, multiple builds. We also have just the base core changes in patch 1.2 that's turning the meta onto its head. Vulnerable and crit heavily nerfed. That really brings down the power of a lot of builds. Resistance rework, resistance is buffed. Armor nerfed as a consequence, but the entire game is rebalanced as well so that we're not overall nerfed in power. There's so much changing, and there's been no PTR, no test server, so we've not been able to test any of these changes. So we're making guesses based on reading the patch notes, based on looking at the new powers, based on theory crafting around what has changed. So what this is not a tier list of the best builds. This isn't even a tier list of which class has the strongest build. This tier list is basically which class is the safest bet to go with in order to provide you with a fun experience throughout the entirety of the game. Because I know some of you folks are going to want to blast all the way to level 100. Some of you folks maybe just want to check out the season a bit, and you might get bored by level 50, level 60, level 70, and some of you might stick around until level 80, 90. So this tier list is really focused on the entirety of the experience. What we're evaluating in this tier list is early game experience, 1 to 50, how strong the class is, how many options it has for that, how strong it is at level 100 when you're all maxed out, you got a perfected build, and then also that big chunk in the middle when you're going from 50 to 100. So the more powerful builds that a class has as options within these given ranges, the higher it's going to rank. And I've also weighed differently. The 1 to 50 is weighed the lowest in this because you spend the least amount of time during the 1 to 50, but I still think it's important to include because I know some of you folks, again, you're going to just dabble your toes into Season 2, and if you pick a bad class that has a bad start, you might peace out at level 40, uninstall D4, and never come back. If you think you will stick it out to level 50 plus, then just pay attention to what I'm saying about these classes and which ones have the weaker starts, and let that inform your decision. What I've weighed most heavily in this tier list is the sort of 50 to 100 experience, especially around level 70 plus, right? When the slog starts, when the slowdown starts, that's when a lot of people start to peace out, or have historically in previous, well, I was gonna say previous season, singular. So this is when you have an endgame build, but you're not perfected. You don't have all your Paragon boards, of course. You maybe don't have all your best in slot items, but you're getting there. When you're in that range of power, how many really powerful build options do you have available to you within your class? And that's what I've weighed the most heavily. But again, we're looking at a comprehensive view of the classes here. Once Season 2 gets underway and we get to actually test out everything that's changed, I'll probably have an updated list either of actual builds or of class power as we move and progress into the season. Now, I'd made a tier list of classes in Season 1, and we'll put this up as a brief comparison. You'll see a lot of similarities, but a couple of differences. Namely, I've been harsher on the Barbarian, dropped him down to D tier, and the Necro as well has dropped from A tier down into B tier. So let's talk through every class now, and let's start at the bottom with the Barbarian. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying that I truly hope that the Barbarian proves me wrong and soars way up there. However, why is the Barb down in the D tier? First off, the leveling experience, the 1 to 50, still amongst the weakest of all the classes. The Barbarian only has mediocre leveling options. It's not going to level as fast as the other classes to 50, and again, that early game Barbarian playstyle, very resource thirsty, and you really feel the difference leveling a Barbarian versus leveling a different class, how much the Barbarian struggles before it gets its endgame kit together. If you factor out that leveling experience, the Barbarian would be higher, but still not topping the list, because even if you take that out, at the endgame, a lot of Barbarian builds, in fact, pretty much all Barbarian builds, all the best Barbarian builds are locked into this 3-shout meta. These shouts are so powerful that as a Barbarian, you're pretty much running the same build, swapping out a couple skills, but it's all shout 1, shout 2, shout 3, because the synergies and the bonuses that you get from that are just so significant and meaningful. So that's one thing, lack of diversity within the build. Number 2, Barbarians could become very strong. Barbarians are going to clear Uber Lilith, no problem, at the end game, but when it comes to mobility, Barbarians just cannot keep up with the other classes that have vastly superior mobility options. So even once you're super strong and tough, all the other classes are just zooming past you. Sure, you can do the content, but other classes are going to do it faster and more efficiently. Barbarians do have a few options for their endgame builds. I think in Season 2, dot builds are going to rise significantly. Now, because of the nerf to crits, I think we're going to see a rise in damage over time builds. So, and that's because dots cannot crit, so they're not affected by the nerf to crit. So I think we're going to see bleed barbs rising. Barbs are also going to be tankier in Season 2. There's a nice buff to fortify with the patch where now it's going to be based on your max life instead of your base life. So overall, if you're building towards maximizing your fortify, by around level 70, you're now having double the fortify you used to have. So overall, again, don't take this to mean Barbarians are terrible. Barbarians aren't going to be able to do the content. They can do the content. You can play any class. Every class is perfectly viable, but if we're going to fairly rate them and rank them in terms of their viability and fun and enjoyment, Barbarians just have fewer viable, diverse options that are competitive and fast and feel as good as some of the other classes. So now we jump up to, skip the C tier, go all the way to the B tier, where we already had the Sorcerer from Season 1, and now the Necromancer drops down into the B tier as well. So first off, Sorcerer, since nothing has changed, why is Sorcerer in the B tier? Sorcerer, actually one of the best classes for leveling 1 to 50. If you want to have a good time at the start of the season and you want to be sold on continuing to play, Sorcerer is a great option. The Sorcerer's problem comes once you get past that. Once you're level 50 plus and you're moving towards your final endgame build. Once you're level 100 and you're maxed out, Sorcerers rock. But it's that gulf between. Sorcerers start off strong and they end strong, but oof, in that middle, they just can't keep up with the better classes. Now, I'm actually hoping that with the changes to resistances, Sorc's going to benefit here. So again, armor is downplayed and resistance is buffed, but we don't have the actual values on what's changing or the practical application of seeing, well, how important is resist really. But theoretically, if resist is important enough that every class wants to stack it, and every class therefore needs to sacrifice some amount of power to stack it, it is possible that the Sorcerer's natural ability to stack resistance via intelligence and its ability to get resistance really easily might mean that the Sorcerer needs to sacrifice less power for resistance and therefore can stack more power, and maybe that'll help it a little bit here, but it's just an unknown right now. Still though, at the very least, I'm hoping that the survivability of the Sorc, which again, in that middle section of your play experience can become very, very rough, that should be improved thanks to the resistance change. Otherwise, in Season 2, the Sorcerer's getting some nice buffs and reworks, particularly with burning damage. So we're seeing a Firewall, for instance, rising. Again, a dot build. We were talking about how dot builds in general should be performing better in Season 2. Historically, cold builds were really the most powerful Sorcerer builds for post 50. You can work a Lightning Sorc. It's a fun build, but it's still beat out by the cold Sorc. But now, thanks to the changes again to dot to burning, Firewall probably going to be pretty competitive, and I'd actually like to see it usurp the Cold Sorc, but we'll see. Now, as for the Necro, why is the Necro down a tier? Well, it got hit pretty hard by the nerf to Vulnerable Crit, and Bone Spear as well got nerfed. Bone Spear was one of the most powerful Necro builds. It still is, but it's just not as strong as it used to be. First off, though, for leveling 1 to 50, Necro's going to be the best class out there. It's the best class, period, for leveling 1 to 50. It's got the most options. It's also got the fastest build for leveling 1 to 50. Because of the nerfs to Bone Spear is no longer one of the best leveling builds for Necro. Blood Surge is going to be probably the best one, the fastest one, but you got a couple of options. Sever is a really fun one. Season 2 also sees a rework to minions. So first off, across the board for all classes, and this is going to affect the Druid as well, minions now can never take more than 1/3 of their life in a single hit. So you cannot one-shot minions anymore. This used to be a special, you had to build into it, into the Necro. Now it's just default across all pets in the game. So it always takes at least 4 hits now to kill a minion. And that's on top of some other buffs that you got to the minions. But overall, does this mean Minion Necro is going to be the best Necro build? No, but it's a lot better. So leveling as a summoner now, very viable. That's probably going to drop off though after. You'll likely want to swap to something else. I would like to see minions rise. I think the AI will remain a problem. I think it's just not going to be as fast at completing the content. Can it do the content? Yes. You can be a viable summoner Necro. I just don't see it being competitive with other builds. Otherwise, in the endgame, best Necro build probably going to be Infinimist. It's called Infinimist because it's a build that revolves around having infinite Blood Mist uptime. It's also a damage over time build, so again, that's going to rise with Season 2. The only thing with Necro, though, is that while Infinimist is going to be super powerful and really easy to level with once you're, again, past level 50, once we're looking at the endgame of endgame, level 100, Necros are just slow. They just don't have mobility options, so they're not going to keep up with many of the other classes. So that's another reason why it's dropping on down, despite, again, the buff to the dots between the nerf to Bone Spear and just the lack of ability to keep up with the other classes. We're bringing that down into B tier. But this means that if you don't think you're going to play all the way to level 100, Necro, probably a really good choice, because again, the best 1 to 50 and a really solid, if you go Infinimist, that is, if you go Infinimist, amazing level 50 plus. If you go with a different build, Necro still has strong options, but it's really the Infinimist that it makes it really, really powerful, 50 plus. So that takes us to the A tier, the Druid. Now, if not for leveling 1 to 50, Druid would be S tier. However, again, I know a lot of folks might just peace out after level 40 if they're not having a good time, and rightfully so. I am not someone who's going to say you need to suffer through hours of pain to have fun. Games should always be fun from the start. So if that matters to you, again, Druids get a slow start. In Season 1, Druids had it a little bit better because there was a pulverized aspect that, if I remember correctly, a pulverized aspect that you can get deterministically, which allowed the pulverized build to be a pretty good leveling option for Druid. Now that's no longer an aspect that you can get deterministically, and therefore that weakens the Druid's leveling once again. So again, you're in a position where generator, spender, generator, spender. And so that could be tedious and unpleasant for a lot of people, especially if you've experienced leveling with a Necro or with a Sorcerer. That said, if you can get past that, if you can suffer through, or if you can just enjoy it and you don't mind it taking a bit longer, then Druids are amazing at everything else. Druids have multiple build options available to them that are viable, that are fun. Also, Fortify, again, we spoke about the Fortify buff. Druids can be built to be super crazy tanky, and now you get to double the Fortify that you used to have effectively. Pulverized Druid, super easy to build, already was super tanky before. Now it's going to be crazy tanky, and you don't need specific uniques for it. Druids in general, I think they're the class that have the most endgame builds that require specific uniques. But Pulverize does not. But you can use Pulverize now to farm those uniques deterministically, added in patch 1.2, 5 bosses, each with specific drop tables for uniques. So now you build up a pulverized druid, and you go target farm your uniques. And then you can progress into pretty much whatever endgame druid build that you want. I know a lot of people that were going druid in the past, and I kept seeing people say, oh, I can't get this to drop, I can't get that to drop. Well, you can't guarantee it, but you can optimize your chances now and at least feel better about knowing you're doing something specifically to try to get the item that you want. There's also the Dolmen Stone new unique item that makes your boulder get swept up in your hurricane and spin around you like a hammerdin. I am so tempted to go with this build. The thing is, it might be crap. We don't know. We haven't tested it, but it just looks so fun. I really hope that it's going to be one of the best builds for the druid. Because right now I am torn between going druid and rogue. I've always gone rogue as my main. I mean, I've made every class. I've tried a variety of builds, but I just found rogue to be the most fun. But I saw that boulder spinning around and I've been really tempted, and now it's a coin toss effectively for me between druid and rogue. Another reason that I want to go druid, or that I'm tempted to go druid, is the ability to target farm uniques, and I might just go pulverize to start, and then depending on what uniques drop for me, I'll let that steer me into my next build, now that we can more easily get uniques. But it's that 1 to 50. I mean, I know I'm gonna get through it. I know I'm gonna muscle through the 1 to 50 regardless of what class I play, but that's really my only reservation on going druid. Maybe I'm gonna start rogue and then progress into druid, I don't know. But let's talk about the rogue now. Actually, to segue into the rogue, we'll mention that there have been nerfs in patch 1.2 to Barbarian and to the Druid, in general, to things in the game in which you could infinitely stack a damage multiplier. So they've put caps on these things. These caps are still high, but they're no longer infinite. And so there were specific circumstances at the very high levels of play where you can get absurd multipliers by stacking immense amount of density and enemies. And these allowed for some like crazy Barbarian and Druid builds. So those got nerfed. They didn't turn the builds to garbage, but it is a cap on the power. So we have seen nerfs to the Druid, for instance. We've not seen nerfs to the Rogue. Rogue, now S tier. Previously I thought Rogue was the best class. I still think Rogue is the best class. Shh, don't tell Blizzard, they're not nerfing Rogue. Yes, Rogue does get hurt significantly by the nerf to crit and vulnerable. It was the easiest class to stack vulnerable on. However, now with the rise of dots, well, guess what? Rogues can build dots too. For leveling, Rogue isn't the absolute best class, but it's still a very strong class. I'd say it's number 3. It's like Necro, Sorc, Rogue, blank, 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 Druid, Barbarian. Twisting Blades Rogue is just so powerful. You can deterministically get the Twisting Blades power, which makes the 1 to 50 super fun. I love Twisting Blades, and I realize some people don't like the Twisting Blades playstyle. I think it's super fun, but again, you can easily get that legendary aspect to make your leveling a breeze, and that takes you into the end game where Twisting Blades is still one of the, if not the best rogue build. Now, with Season 2, we're seeing a buff that it might actually, well, a unique item interaction that might make the Death Trap Rogue, which is also kind of a Twisting Blades build, but it works Death Trap in. Death Trap's going to be even more powerful with this unique, so potentially Death Trap might be the flavor of Twisting Blades that you end up going with preferentially now. And we're likely to see some kind of dot worked into it, so probably a Poison Imbue, for instance, or Poison Trap, going back to that. There's been so many varieties within Twisting Blades, in fact. We've seen Shadow Imbue, Cold Imbue, Poison Trap. So again, now we're likely to see a return to dots for Twisting Blades. And other Rogue builds are good as well. Rogue has a lot of options of viable builds, melee, range, what have you, and once you're at the endgame of endgame, once you have like your maxed out gear and everything, then so many different Rogue builds are super strong. The only thing about the Rogue is that it is the squishiest of the classes, so if that matters to you, then yeah, maybe the Rogue isn't the most inviting option, but for me it's always been the most fun class. Again, you have a variety of playstyles that are really robust. It's good in the beginning, the middle, the end. To me, it's the safest pick for Season 2 of a class that it's just difficult to not enjoy yourself. Again, unless survivability super matters to you. You need to be more proactive in avoiding damage as a rogue. If you want like a brainless, mindless build, rogue is not for you. In that case, I'd go with Druid as like, not that it's brainless and mindless, but because you can build it to be so tanky. Pulverize, you could be pretty brainless, I guess you can say, just in that you're not gonna die. But given rogues have not been nerfed, given so much is in flux for Season 2, I think Rogue really is the safest choice of the class that's going to remain strong across all aspects of the game. But these are my thoughts, feelings, and impressions. Again, tomorrow the patch launches. Maybe this list gets twisted upside down. I highly doubt it, but heck, imagine Barb's S tier and Rogue's D tier. What a world that would be. But I turn the question to you folks. What's your tier list? Which classes do you think are the best, the worst, and what class are you planning to start with? Again, myself, it's a coin flip now between Rogue and Druid. My hesitation with Rogue is just that I always go Rogue. I might want to go Druid just to have that different experience and to really take advantage of the target farming of the different bosses. But again, what are you folks going with? Sound off in the comments. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch, Patreon, and YouTube supporters for making these videos possible. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. Check out these other videos and subscribe to join Rhykker's Raiders for more Diablo content.